What does it say about the character of an employer who uses the N-word when addressing an employee? What grades do you give the president on handling the crisis in Syria? And accreditation challenges for both Norfolk Public Schools and Norfolk State University. How are our students doing in the classroom? And wait, is that new music you hear? Hi everyone, I'm Barbara Ham Lee, along with Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Will Leviste. It's time for the Another View Roundtable and more, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. So this is our third season of Another View, the radio show. So producer Lisa Godley and I decided to make a few changes to update our look, if you will. And so we have new music, courtesy of our very own Jay Sennett. The tease music that you heard at the top of the show is from a cut called Burrell's Choice on Jay's latest CD, Still Standing. And the show open and close music is called Cliffhanger, which I think is really appropriate for the roundtable, don't you think?
So, yeah.
It's from the CD, It's Telling a Drummer's Perspective. And if you're streaming us on your computer right now, hi, everybody wave, hi. You can actually see us live here in the studio at WHRV. So we were hoping that Bill Thomas would be sitting in here so all the single ladies could see what he looks like, but we have him on the phone today since he just got back in town. We also have a brand new website which looks wonderful, and we've updated our Facebook page, and now we're even tweeting. So we are just all over it. Absolutely. Thank you so much to our Director of Online Media, Dina Richards, and her stellar team for helping us out in that endeavor.
Yeah, and we also missing Roger.
I know, and we're going to, and Roger is in Japan, out of the country, doing a little visiting, so he won't be with us today. But we do have Will Leviste, who is an author, journalist, and talk show host. Hi, Will.
How you doing, Barbara?
So glad to always have you here.
Thank you.
And Carol Pretlow, who is a professor of political science at Norfolk State University. Hi, Carol.
Well, hello. I'm glad to be here.
Great. And joining us by phone is our favorite community activist, Bill Thomas. How you doing, Bill?
Greetings to everyone. I'm fine.
Yeah, and we are so sorry that you're not here in the studio with us, but we know how that traffic and the tunnel can be sometimes. And we understand you just jetted in, too. So,
Yeah.
Just touched down on the private jet.
All right. Let's get to our topics for today, Roundtable. So the Syrian conflict dominating the news this week. Russian leader Vladimir Putin offers diplomatic solution. President Obama addresses the nation. Secretary of State John Kerry is negotiating with the Russians over the turnover of Syria's chemical weapons. Wow, a lot of things going on. Let's first hear from the president about why he wanted to take military action.
This is not a world we should accept. This is what's at stake. And that is why, after careful deliberation, I determined that it is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike. The purpose of this strike would be to deter Assad from using chemical weapons, to degrade his regime's ability to use them, and to make clear to the world that we will not tolerate their use. That's my judgment as Commander-in-Chief. But I'm also the president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy. So even though I possess the authority to order military strikes, I believed it was right, in the absence of a direct or imminent threat to our security, to take this debate to Congress. I believe our democracy is stronger when the president acts with the support of Congress. And I believe that America acts more effectively abroad when we stand together.
Carol, now, right after, there's the diplomatic side also that's been going on, the negotiating. Does the president look strong or weak? There's been a lot of debate back and forth.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. And initially, you're looking for an identification of a specific mission. That is, what is the agenda and how is it going to be accomplished? And when you look at how it's going to be accomplished, there are several different things that are in there. He has diplomatically, or on the diplomacy level, given us a fair look at what we have in place. I think the weakest link of this is the Russian aspect of it. And of course, I understand why that is in place, but I think I'm always a little nervous about Russia, and I think we, the American public, need to understand what the dynamics in dealing with Russia are and what the relationship is between Syria and Russia, particularly in terms of military engagement and how Russia has been supportive of Syria. So there's so much that we need to know about this.
So, Will, do you think that ultimately we will wind up with military action anyway?
I sure hope not. I mean, I think that how this has unraveled, as messy as it has been, that the option that is on the table now, where they are at least discussing the issue of chemical weapons and how that may lead to more talks, I think is the best option that we have. I think the president coming first, talking about strikes. What struck me was I was remembering when I was in Denver when he accepted the nomination for president. Mm-hmm. And I remember the euphoria and the tears in people's eyes. And I remember looking at that and saying, these people really believe that this man is a transformational figure, and he's going to bring about world peace, and he's Neo. He's the one. And then he gets the Nobel Peace Prize. And then when I see him coming in that direction, sort of, it just kind of struck me that when I saw that happening in Denver, I was thinking, like a journalist, this guy is a politician. He's like Clinton, he's like Bush, and him coming in this direction of we're going to lay down strikes and so, which is much more like he's just being Clinton or he's being Bush, not this transformational figure that people were harping onto him and wanting him to be. And I think that where they are now in diplomacy and trying to talk through a solution is more of what he needs to be and what we need here, because more bombs is not going to... Syria is such a complex situation. More bombs and just airstrikes, there's no guarantee that was even going to achieve anything in terms of even preventing more chemical weapons from being used.
But Bill, do you think that we can trust Syria and Russia to do what they whatever the agreement is, that they will do what they say they're going to do?
No, I think we got to go back to your original question, is whether or not the president is look weak in the world in relationship to the action he's taken. He looks mighty weak. I mean, it's just clear the veil that you go out and you draw these red lines and you do these things and say these things, and then you don't back them up, then that just empowered the Russians and the Syrians. And it's just outrageous that we would be in a position where we are, number one, trying to say that we're going to use a military force and put our ladies and guys out there on the front line, but we have sequestration. They couldn't practice flying. They couldn't take aircraft carriers out just months ago. So the people aren't ready and trained. So you can't have it both ways. You cannot have a cut in defense that's really killing the arch of our back in terms of being able to use muscle. And then we say, okay, we're going to strike you. And then we don't do it. Then we let the Russians take control of the world situation. And now they're dictating to us. America is the weakest point that I've ever seen it in my lifetime in terms of presidential leadership on a military front.
Wow, Carol.
Wow. Well, I agree with both you and Bill on this, that initially we saw an idealistic president. That's not unusual. When we look at Woodrow Wilson, when we look at FDR, even Truman, we thought later their strength appeared. But it is a very confusing message that the president has presented, and mainly because we start, as you said, with this red line. Most of the American public doesn't even understand what that entails. And I think he was
So explain that, because what he was saying was, if you gas these people, if you use these chemical weapons, as far as we're concerned, that's the line in the sand, right?
And I think at the time he spoke, he was thinking he was going to have UN support of this, and Great Britain and France.
And Great Britain said no.
No. And so when you draw a red line, you're also, from days in playing poker, you're also looking at your back. Who's got my back? Well, if the people of the nations that were supposed to have your back don't have it, then you have to go back to the drawing stage again and say what we can do. Now, the compromise situation in looking at Russia is, wait a minute, you trust a country who has military installations in Syria, who is supporting them economically, and by the way, it might be a strategy. They say, look, guys, you hide these weapons over in your territory. When this thing boils over, I can go back to Russia and get them. This is the idealism, I think, should be fading.
So, do you think he should have gone ahead with the strike since he said he was going to do it and not even have asked Congress?
No, I don't think he should have, said he was going to go through with strikes, and I don't think he should have gone through strikes. And I also disagree with Bill that the United States looks so weak here. The issue of the line in the sand, the red line, was that there's 193 countries that had agreed not to use chemical weapons. Syria is one that has not. And so when you look at the UN and you look at the world's countries trying to agree on something and move forward, if you got 193 countries that have at least agreed to this, and you got a country that's violating that, that's a reason to bring those nations together, the international community together, and to at least try to hold firm on something. And what I would have rather seen them do was to come to the international community and be that transformational figure and say, look, there is no easy, simple option here. We do not want to rain down bombs on Syria. You know the United States has the ability to do it. You know I will do it if I absolutely have to do it. I'm the guy that got bin Laden, okay? I would have rather have seen him start there first, and let's try to exhaust that and be at this point and try to get everybody together to come to a more holistic solution, with the understanding that if we can't get that done, then the United States potentially will have no choice but to go in there. And
Bill, let's bring Bill in for a second. Go ahead, Bill.
Wow, that's insanity. You either put up or shut up. If you do things like that or you say things, he should have went on and dropped the bomb on them because they crossed the red line. That's what he said. I mean, if you meet a bully in the back alley and then you're going to do all that talk, if you draw a line on the street and then you don't do anything, that bully's going to cross that line and knock you out. Here is the dangers that we face, in my judgment. Number one, that is the Russians have a military naval base there. Number two, they brought in their most sophisticated frigates to do the missile defense. Number three, they just set down one of their largest destroyers that has missiles capable of sinking carriers.
Exactly.
So what is happening, and I don't trust Russia. I think they're the evil empire, as Ronald Reagan said, and I believe that right now they are fortifying their forces. So if we do something, they can go ahead and start the next war. See, people are naive. They believe that people love people and they're going to get together with the UN. If the Russians can destroy democracy and take over the world, as they've been trying to do for the past 100 years, Carol, you know that's true, they will do it. And right now, I just think they're fortifying their forces. They're getting ready for the worst possible scenario. So if they choose, not America, if they choose to bring the fight to us, they'll be in a position to do it.
Bill sounds like a neocon living back in the 1950s.
Wait a minute.
Russia has been contracting for for decades.
Yeah, you
Russia.
believe that.
You talking about Russia wants to end democracy? Look, there's a Russian that owns the New York Nets. What are you talking about? Russia is engaged in the world economy, and no one has the bandwidth or the wherewithal to really engage in another massive world war. No one is interested in that.
But Carol, do you believe, and this is open actually to all of you all, what about the op-ed, the editorial that Putin put in the New York Times?
That's just posturing. That's just trash talk.
I thought it was hilarious because once somebody stabbed me in the back, I'm not quite ready and open to say, oh, I forgive you and you have the greatest motives in the world. I'm looking at what your agenda is. You might smile and I might engage with a conversation with you, but all the while I'm watching my back. And that editorial said we need to watch our back. This man has a political agenda. I don't know whether it's about communism or not, but he's got this agenda and he's willing to do anything to make the United States look bad.
Okay, let's go to David in Chesapeake. David, hi, you're in the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I have to disagree. Usually I'm on Bill's side. I do have to disagree
Oh,
as well.
God, I agree.
David's having the same day today.
I am. I'm usually on Bill's side, but I have to disagree today. I think Obama looks 10 times stronger now with his change in the outlook and mentality. Whereas in the beginning he came out as just like something like Bush would do. Let's just attack people. Let's not even think about it. Let's not use our brains here. I mean, what Kerry offered up in London should have been the first alternative to begin with, and to show that we are working with Russia. I mean, you got to think like some of the things that people have said. Syria and a lot of those Middle East countries always have Russia as their little backup guy. Hey, if the U.S. doesn't do something we like, we can just go to Russia. They'll kind of strong arm the thing. Well, if U.S. and Russia work together on this, it takes that out of the equation. Something else that I think that is very important, that Syria has these chemical weapons because both the U.S. and Russia provided them to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we sold through the Reagan and Bush Senior administrations, we sold Saddam the chemical weapons to keep them from being taken over by Iran. Saddam moves them to Syria. Syria now has chemical weapons.
Okay, David, thanks so much for your call. You want to react, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think David is having a sane day. We're glad to hear you call on your good day when you're not agreeing with Bill, because he's absolutely right. It's like, come on, people, a lot of this is posturing, it's ego, but we can't lose sight of the fact of diplomacy is messy, that there's also cultural misunderstandings that go on here in terms of how you speak in a certain way in a certain culture. It doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to us here. So, Putin is just trying to sort of assert himself as someone to be reckoned with on the international stage. But come on, Russia, as I said earlier, has been contracting. I was just in Mongolia a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. Russia was in Mongolia for generations. They're out of Mongolia. They're looking for ways to get. Why are we here? Why are we over there? Can we get out of these places? And again, when you hear Bill talking about these evil empire and evil people, the Russian people want the same things that we want here. An opportunity to take care of their families, live a decent life, and have some measure of freedom.
Bill, do you want to react to that?
Sure. It's not the Russian people that are calling the shots. It's the Russian leadership that's calling the shot. So, that's just an erroneous assumption if you want to do that. At the end of the day, it's more about that. If we were concerned about human life, there have been over 100,000 people murdered in Syria. There's been 1,100 supposedly killed by some kind of nerve gas or something that nobody can identify who did it. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many people are dead. The Syrian leadership is still going to have the capacity to kill another 100,000, and they'll just kill them the conventional way like we do in the hood with bullets and lead, and nobody will say a thing, and everything will be the same. But the main part is that our administration, our leadership of our armed forces look mighty weak because we said something to a bully, and a bully doesn't care, and then we just backed up on it. And you never do that in your personal life. Lord knows if you're the leader of the largest and freest nation in the world.
Okay, Carol, you got the last word on this topic, and then we're going to move on.
I hate to agree with Bill, and I think that he has said it all as far as I'm concerned. The bottom line is politics, folks.
Okay. All right. The Board of Visitors is expected to name Eddie Moore interim president of Norfolk State University. Today, the Board of Visitors is meeting as we speak. Dr. Tony Atwater was fired 3 weeks ago, and while the university would not state a reason, there was much consternation over the lack of audits for the past few years. The School of Nursing not being allowed to accept new students in the 2-year nursing program because of low licensing test scores, and the college accrediting agency was on campus this week. So, Bill, let's start with you. Can Eddie Moore turn this around?
Well, here's what saddens me is, number one, I know a lot of guys and ladies are on the board. I just think they made a huge miscalculation of the final outcome with Dr. Atwater, for good or better or worse. The whole matter was handled very, very poorly. I don't know if you guys know it, but Carlos Capó over at Regents University was let go in first month of the school year for Regents University. You heard nothing about it. It was handled in a professional way and the way things should be handled.
Yeah, there was one article in the pilot, but that was pretty much it.
And they released it on a Friday, so that was on the weekend. But at the end of the day, then what we go then and retread these people that are going to take over these institutions, that's going to come up with the same program, and it's going to be the same outcomes. Instead of being bold, what Norfolk State needs is someone with leadership in STEM education, research and opportunities, and how to take the university into the 21st century curriculum that they're going to need both athletically and managerially to be able to get done what needs to get done. The people that we have turned the keys over to, even on interim periods, and Mr. Moore is a fine gentleman, and I'm sure he's done very, very well, but he doesn't have an academic background. He doesn't know research. He doesn't know entrepreneurial skills and things that institution needs to be teaching our children, especially the academic core, where they're really getting hurt on. And then let me just end it with this. Because the pipeline to Norfolk State and to other schools in Virginia are coming right out of the public schools in Norfolk and Richmond, where over 70% of these schools are not even accredited. So I think they do a fine job with what they got, and we just need to concentrate on the core elements of education and academics to be able to pull these schools up.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me give the phone number, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. We're going to take calls about the topics that we're currently discussing. So we're talking about the Norfolk State University situation, 440-2665, 1-800-940-2240. Will, from what I've read about Eddie Moore, though, it seems like he's kind of a fiscal cleanup guy, if you will. He turned Virginia State around. He was the one who closed St. Paul's, which is another HBCU. Could this be just an opportunity to kind of help Norfolk State get cleaned up while they look for that innovative person that Bill was talking about?
Without knowing the details of the board and their decision making, it seems that's absolutely what they're doing. He's been hired as an interim. So he has this reputation. He has this expertise. I don't know. Bill's saying he doesn't have an academic experience.
He doesn't have a PhD.
Yeah, but he was the president of Virginia State for 17 some odd years. I mean, he understands how academia works, and he's hired as an interim. And their main issue at Norfolk State was very much to find that. So it sounds like they're bringing someone that has an expertise in this to clean up those matters while they go and make an extensive search to perhaps bring in, and I agree with Bill on that point, to bring in someone who is a visionary, who does have a sense of what is needed going forward. And I also, I also agree with Bill in the sense, I know Carlos Campo, and the way that Region did that as opposed to how this is done. I've been in situations where I've been an employer and gotten blindsided like that. It makes absolutely no sense to let someone go when you blindside them, where you have them dragged in, and especially in a public position like this, sort of dragged in the public that way. It makes no sense, and it actually reflects badly on those who hired them in the first place. Just because it seems like, did you do your due diligence? And then when you decided, which they didn't decide just the day before they let them go, that decision was made months, and they had been thinking about this. Why not do it in a way that is dignified, that he can retain his reputation, that the university and the board can retain its reputation, and the students and everybody else involved, your main clients, can have a sense of stability, your faculty can have a sense of stability. So I agree that's really problematic. But I think that, bringing in Mr. Moore, who has this experience as an interim, makes sense.
Carol, I know you work at Norfolk State, so you have to be careful in terms of your opinions, but I'm just curious as to how things are on campus. I mean, are things is the day-to-day continuing as all this drama is going on at the top?
Well, I had the weekend following the initial announcement that Dr. Atwater would not be returning, I spent the whole weekend saying, I don't want to go back. I don't know what's going to happen. And when I got in class and saw those students who were concerned, certainly, but whose major focus was, I need to get my education. I need to figure out how, in some cases, how I'm going to balance my job and my family with my education. And I see that passion every single day. I'm thinking, yes, we have problems. Yes, they need to be ironed out. But those of us who are scholars want to do our thing, and we're proud to see students saying, that's a problem, but here I have to. And actually, my class sizes are larger than ever. So,
wow. Okay, so students are coming. If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable. Will Leveist, who is an author and journalist and talk show host, Carol Pretlow, a political science professor at Norfolk State University, and joining us by phone is community activist Bill Thomas. Let's see. Carrie joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Carrie. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara. I love your show. It's like one of my favorite hours of the week.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
I think it's a great idea to get Mr. Moore in as an interim, sort of clean house. I think that's a luxury that an interim has that a permanent person doesn't have. But my other comment sort of reflects what was said. I think I read something in the paper recently about Dr. Atwater. I was a student at Norfolk State when he came on board. And they had parties and receptions and galas, and the search process costs a lot of money. So I think from the financial perspective, they're already having financial issues at Norfolk State, and to see them go through this expensive process and then the expensive welcoming and training process over and over again is really disappointing, because academically you want to see the credibility rise, and they can't do that until they get their finances in order, can really beef up academic programs. So I just wanted to say, no more party. When the person comes, have a potluck. Out all these expensive vetting, expensive parties, welcome, and get to work.
Okay, Carrie, thanks so much for your call. We appreciate that. Bill, she said no more potlucks.
No
more galas, no more parties.
But we're not dealing with the core problem.
Okay, go ahead.
The core problem is the pipeline that's feeding Norfolk State and Virginia State. Right now, the financing side on the federal funding pipeline is drying up. Pell Grants are being cut back to the African American community because they're being expanded over into the Latino, Hispanic community. So that pot is not getting bigger. It's just more people are in the pot drawing on those few resources. Another source that academics, that African Americans use quite well, is what they call Parent Plus loans. Those were highly restricted now because the economy has turned bad, and a lot of the parents at these institutions haven't been able to get the loans, and therefore their kids have not been able to sustain their tuition at these schools. I think Howard lost 700 students. There's a whole lot of these students that are just not coming in, so the finances of Norfolk State is going to be undergirded by the ability for the students to be able to pay and for those financial pipelines to be in place to be able to do it. If Eddie Moore's there or if, doesn't matter, the president of Harvard came down here to take over, you still have a fundamental problem. But the worst fundamental problem is the fact that the educational pipeline of the people. These kids are coming from Norfolk public school system, Richmond, Petersburg, and Portsmouth, and these public schools are not producing ready college kids that are ready and set to go. So what Norfolk State is doing, and God bless them for doing it, they're trying to do all this remediation, and teachers must be straining themselves just to get kids up to speed where they can perform competitively on an educational basis at a college level. And all that stuff costs money. So I don't care who you bring in there until you shore up both of those pipelines, the financial pipelines. Listen, to give you an example. Right now, if you got a kid going to school and you're a parent and you get a PLUS loan, that's only good for 1 year. What you going to do for year 3 and 4? The federal government's got to find a way to give parents some kind of line of credit so it guarantees that pipeline, so you don't have to be worried every year whether or not you're going to be able to get that. On Pell Grants, since we are expanding the pot in terms of the pie, the people that are getting pieces of the pie, but are not expanding the pie, that pie needs to be expanded. Pell Grants needs to be doubled so that these kids on the other side that don't have the financial wherewithal can do it. And then lastly, we've got to fix these public schools. I know a few years back, I'm just not getting on Norfolk because I'm on Norfolk, they had 17 African-American males who graduated with a B average. Portsmouth had 25 in their entire school district. These kids are going to these schools. What do you expect these people, Miss Pretlow, or anybody else to do? Because they got to take their time to get these kids up to speed. So don't blame everything on Dr. Atwater. Atwater's credentials were fine. Look them up on the Internet. What he needs is a community, a board support, community support, and faculty and staff support, and the President of the United States as well as the governor to support the educational financing.
Carol, do you find that you do spend time having to bring your students up to speed?
That is exactly what most of us find ourselves doing. And, of course, increasing enrollments means that this means an increase. And so we're trying to find some creative ways to address these problems, as we have in the past. One of the things that I say I'm very proud of the African-American community is that when there's a crisis, somehow we figure it out. But certainly we would like the support of the federal government and of the state and everything to help us, because it's an amazing difficulty to help students to learn to write a paragraph or to punctuate or to do footnotes. And so some students have come up with some ideas. We have a mentoring program, and Dr. Hoy, who is our retention czar, is spearheading that. But in between time, even students have said, I will tutor someone in my class. And I think, when you have a crisis, working together. I think so.
And making that happen. Well, let's dovetail into the Norfolk State, Norfolk Public Schools discussion, actually, since you brought that up, Bill. Norfolk Public Schools are facing accreditation issues of their own. 31 of 45 schools expected not to meet accreditation standards because of the SOL test scores. Now, Dr. King says that the teachers and principals were not trained in the new testing. They made it voluntary training as opposed to mandatory training. But this is an urban school district, which means that the majority of the students who are affected are African American and Latino. And what's going to happen to our kids, Will?
Well, I think, as I watched the city council had a special session on that, and Dr. King did in fact say that, and it just struck me, if you're making a change in standards, why aren't you properly implementing that change in a way that provides the training, and then we do the scores, and then we say, now we compare
because the state told them it was coming. It's not like the state didn't tell them it was coming.
So I'm like, I don't understand sometimes how such intelligent people we have at all of these things cannot do what appears to be the obvious. But I think that people should recognize that is in fact what happened, and he seems to me to be a very competent person that has a vision for what he wants to accomplish. And as he was saying to the city council, you just need some time. Now, on the flip side of that, one of the things that strikes me is Jeffrey Canada, who is up in Harlem, has a school up in Harlem, is known as a very forward-thinking,
one block at a time,
forward-thinking, revolutionary educator. And one of the things I've seen in a speech that he said is, about how education is not changing its business model. And he was comparing it to the banking industry. All of us on this line, all of us can remember when banks used to close at 3, right?
Yes.
And you couldn't bank, and you couldn't bank on Saturdays, right?
That's right.
Now banks close at 5. You can bank on a Saturday. You can bank online. Why is it so difficult for educational institutions to change their business models to meet the new needs of their clients? And I think that is the fundamental thing we should be asking as a community. Whose interest is it to maintain this antiquated business model that is not working for these kids? And why are they doing that?
Carol?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I posed that with my students in American government the other day. We were talking about issues and education came up, and they had an answer. They said people don't like to get outside of their comfort level. And when they're comfortable doing something, even though they've done it for 50 years and maybe it didn't work for those 50 years, they still don't want to change. They're afraid of the change. They're afraid of thinking outside of the box, of thinking creatively.
And they're selfish. And they're thinking about themselves. Because at the end of the day, these are the children. These are supposed to be our future. It affects, if you have poor schools, it affects housing values. It affects businesses coming into a community. It erodes the community in major, major ways. So this is a lot of selfishness. I've got mine, and I'm just going to maintain my stuff and let those other people's kids just languish. That's what was going on here.
So, Bill, Dr. King is proposing charter schools that will be run by the school system. Can it work?
No, it cannot work. And if you had Jesus get off the cross and go down there and try to be the superintendent, that's not going to work. What's going to work is it takes parents. The business model that Will is referring to is that we don't have parents that are teaching their kids how to read at 2 and 3 and 4 years old. We don't have parents reading to their kids. We don't have parents. We have, all these horrible statistics. And then you want the school system to be the mommy, the daddy, the papa, the feeder, the lover, the helper, and everything else. The school system isn't made to do that. These SOL tests are so simple, and it just disturbs me that our kids cannot pass these tests. But the issue that I did, though, rather than just talking, my children went to Ruffner Middle School, a school that has now been, I guess, not accredited. And they did fine there. When they were there, we won the fluorescence contest, we won the city debate, we won the lacrosse, we brought Japanese in there, we had parents involved in there, and my son and daughter went on to the very best universities in the country, in the world, and did quite well. We engaged the parents, we had them come to the PTAs, we had the teachers go out into the community, into the projects to engage the mamas and the daddies that weren't there to try to get them involved in that. Until we fix that problem in terms at the front door, the schools will never be able to be successful. We have kids in these schoolhouses that don't deserve to be in the schoolhouses. They have all kinds of social and mental and environmental problems that it just engulfs the teachers.
But Bill,
they cannot do anything with all of these kids in these classrooms.
But Bill, the Constitution for Virginia says that they will educate all of the children.
We need to change that business model. We need to change the Constitution.
Carol?
Wow. Okay, you've said a lot, Bill. First of all, that everything goes back to the family, and I agree with that. And you, me, Will, all of us have been fortunate to have been from those families. But what do? We can't just say, oh, well, the parents didn't do nothing, bye. And what can we do to help the parents, to help the kids, so that we can turn this thing around? We've got to figure out what we can do specifically to help.
I can tell you don't want to hear it. I'll tell you.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
We do want to
Take
hear
your
it.
best shot. Go ahead.
There are some parents that are actually raising their children. In fact, I probably would think a good majority of them are single moms that are doing the very best job they can. And then I think you ought to allow those kids to be put in an environment so they can continue to progress and blossom and grow. There are some kids that have some very fundamental problems that you're just going to have to segregate in a different area to bring them up to speed. You can't just have this universe where you're going to have everybody trying to achieve at the same level that don't have the skill sets or the mental makeup, our background, our values, our morals, or just civilization to be able to be all together. You got to separate it. You got to do things like school within a school. You got to find the framework where the kids can blossom. And then I guess lastly, and I'll be quiet, I think we need to start kids at 3-year-old. We need to get these kids right when they can start walking and right when they can start going to get them their basic literacy skills and fundamentals so they can learn how to read, associate with objects, and understand the world in a better way so they can stay caught up with the rest of the class.
Okay, Will, last word on this topic. And then we're going to
I was going to say, I do not agree with throwing kids out and just casting them away because we're essentially...
Well, he did say school within the school and come up with some other
programs. I didn't say that.
programs.
So don't be accusing me of doing something I didn't say.
Okay, so I just wanted to, for anybody who might have misunderstood that, that's the direction that you were going. But what I think is that we talked about Norfolk State, that there's a potential solution here, that Norfolk State, these colleges, should get engaged in the local school systems. For example, when you talk about mediating kids as they're coming in, Norfolk State might put together a Norfolk State prep.
Well, actually,
that's
what SCAS, which was the Spartan Crusade for Academic Success, was supposed to have done. Unfortunately, it didn't get off the ground.
Which brings me back to what I said earlier.
Because Dr. Atwater's gone now.
What is the agenda? What is the benefit for not putting forth and executing these solutions that we know work? So, for example, we talked about changing the business model of schools. I mentioned Jeffrey Canada School. Well, we've got a version of that type of forward thinking here, an Achievable Dream over in Newport News. So we
which
know,
is getting ready to open a Virginia Beach campus.
Right. So we
not a Norfolk campus.
So we know that there are different models and approaches that work. And I agree with what Carol and Bill have said, that you do need diversity in terms of different situations that kids can learn. But I'll keep saying we know what works for kids who, for example, might be in a single-parent home where the parent is not engaged or tired. There are also two-parent homes that are dysfunctional. So let's not just all throw it on single-parenthood. But we know what works for these kids that are in these kinds of environments that need to get the parents engaged. Achievable Dream has a model that makes the parents be engaged, and
if they want their kid to participate. Absolutely.
So we know it works.
Absolutely. Okay, federal jury in New York awarded $250,000 in compensatory damages to Brandy Johnson. She's an African-American employee for a nonprofit called Strive. Her African-American and Latino boss, that's the way he describes himself, Rob Carmona, used the N-word repeatedly while chastising her. He says it was tough love. Let's take a listen.
Seriously, you guys are alike. Smart as shit, but dumb as shit, really. Both of you, you know what it is? Both of you are and I'm not saying using the term derogatory, because sometimes it's good to know when to act like a but y'all act like all the time.
I'm really offended by that. I don't think that I do.
You could be offended, but it's true.
Now, Mr. Carmona says, quote, I come from a different time. What I'm trying to do is to help. That's the transition. This case has showed me that I've got to take stock of that at my age. And he's 61 years old. So his excuse or his reasoning behind using this language and using that word was that it was tough love, that it was okay because he's African American, she's African American. The jury said, nobody can use the N-word, Will.
I've said on this show before that we get so wrapped up in this word that we are losing sight of what real racism is and what we really should be focusing on. So in this use of this word, again, I will say context is everything. This word in English is referred to as a polysemy, where you have a word that has multiple meanings that are related, but depending on the context, how you use it, is what the meaning is. And there are other groups that have words like this. For example, in the gay community, the word queer. I cannot use that word queer unless I'm very clear about the context and everybody that's in that. But we've had shows called using that word.
Right.
So what gets me is that why is it that when it comes to black people and this particular word, does everybody misunderstand that you can have words that have multiple meanings and context, and the context in which it is used is what determines it. Now, again, I agree, the word and the whole history of slavery and all that, come on, I agree, it's a terrible word, savage and all of that. But you also got to have allowances that there are other people who, and in our culture, we have always, as the man is saying, have always used the word in multiple ways. So why are we getting so wrapped up in this word and empowering it to the point where we're not even focusing on real racism?
Bill, his attorney says this is the first trial where it has been African American against African American, as opposed to before where there have been instances where a white person has called an African American the N-word, and we know what happens when that happens. But this is the first time the courts have said, no, it doesn't matter that you're African American, you still can't do it. Bill?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know. He was the guy, the 61-year-old guy, appeared to be telling her the truth. So I don't understand what the problem is.
So you don't think that she should have been awarded this money?
Oh no, there's absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is ridiculous. I mean, it is so. This is one time I got to agree with Will. 10,100 agree.
Wow.
It is. We won't act on that. I don't even want to go. It's just so ridiculous. That she probably was. And so I agree with him. Lucky I wasn't on the jury, I guess all I can say.
Must have been an all-white jury and a white judge.
Because I said, yeah.
Carol, please bring some.
I hope. See, I agree with you, Will, that you're thinking in the context of a particular situation. And of course, I have a friend that calls me in the morning and she uses the B word, get up, But now, if we move that to an office setting, even though we work together, I would not expect her to use that. There's a standard, there are things that you do casually and to your friends.
But isn't that the context, though, also, that it puts this in a situation where it's a work environment? I wouldn't expect that from any boss.
No, I think that's inappropriate in a work environment, and I could see the questioning. Now, in terms of the jury award, I'm not so certain. I think maybe if I had been on the jury, I would have advised an apology, and it must go on record that you apologize. But I don't think somebody should be awarded some money.
She actually received $250,000 in compensatory damages, $5,000 from Strive, from the organization, in punitive damages, and
what you think she went and did with that money?
From actually $20,000 from him in punitive damages. So it was like $280,000.
I do agree that in the workplace, I agree with you, Carol, that in a workplace setting, and when you get into the legalities of hate speech, any word really can in a particular setting can be classified as hate speech, but that's a little bit too much money, and I know I don't even want to say on air what she probably did with that money.
Call me that if I'm gonna get that much money.
Bill, do you think it makes a difference because it was in the workplace as opposed to on the street?
I can't understand the basis of the award, because when you look at it and the way some of us are so fearful of the word, when even a person of a different color calls me that, which I don't even, it doesn't bother me at all either. But for same the two black folks talking that way in a business or in a personal is still insulting. It's still not right. It's still disrespectful. Those are the issues that I see coming out. If you called her a B or something else, I see it all the same. It's disrespectful whether a white person said it or a black person said it. So in that context, I can see it. But it's just for the word, him calling her the word, I don't have an issue with that. I just talk about the respect, and you don't talk to people like that, and especially a man. I don't think should be talking to a woman like that. A 61-year-old man with his experience should be doing it at all anyhow. It's just disrespectful.
Do you think that at any point in time in our lifetimes, the N-word will no longer be an issue?
I think so, and I hope so, because I think if you follow the history of the word, it was a time when it wasn't an issue. So it evolved because, again, I've said before, words are metaphors. Words are simply symbols that represent something. Letters themselves is just a symbol that represents something. So when you put them together, it has meaning. And we collectively agree what the meaning is. So there's nothing in the letter G or the letter ER that has this deep...
As opposed to the letter A?
Yes, there's nothing embodied in these letters that means all of those things unless we agree what it means. So we change what we agree. Surely, we can change it, and then the word chair becomes that hateful word. If we agree that the word chair should represent that. I mean, and I just, again, we spend so much time on this word that we are missing the whole boat on the racism that's going on.
Go ahead, Bill.
And I think the man should have put on the case to prove that he was what he called her. I mean, I just think he should have said, this is how these people act. And that's what we call them.
Well,
and I just think he should have proved I don't think he had a good lawyer.
Well, you know what, Bill?
I proved she was one if I'd have called her one. I see plenty of them all the time.
Actually, that is his argument. That was his argument. That he was trying to explain to them about their behavior.
Absolutely.
And he used the word to explain that. The jury saw it differently. So, Bill, your last word from you. Do you think it'll ever change?
Oh, it's changing now. Our kids, my children, don't even worry about it. It's just not even. It's not even important. It's not even significant.
Okay, Carol?
Well, I agree. And in fact, yesterday in the class, we had a discussion about a string of words that I got punished for as a child. And I'm 66, and I still thought I still don't understand why my mom thought they were so bad. I mean, they were what they are. And so I learned to develop acronyms to substitute for. But the point is that our kids, they hear it in music, they talk casually to their friends. I don't think it's going to matter 20 years from now.
All right, last thing, and we got about a little less than a minute. What do you guys think about the webcam and about, streaming and our new look and all that good stuff? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's very cool. I think it's great to be back on broadcast, video air. Another View was on TV. People remember it. I know a lot of people miss it. So this is a great step, maybe back in that direction.
Hopefully so, Carol.
I agree, and it's exciting, and I'm hoping that things will go even further in the future.
That's great. Okay, Bill, you got the last word.
I'm going to bring me an advertising sign down there and try to figure out how I can make some money. So I'm going to put it on the wall right there next to Will. I'm going to have a sign, some advertiser, and I got to figure out with WHRO how we can negotiate a business split on it.
Just don't use your picture. Don't use your photo.
And we're out. We got to go, everybody. Thanks so much, Roundtable, and we will be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View on WHRV 89.5. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
All right, and that was Wynton Marsalis. That's great. We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of the Another View Roundtable. If you'd like to hear it again, visit anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And check out our new website. It's much easier now to leave a comment, sign up for our eView newsletter, or listen to a past show. We've even sorted by category, so you can find all of the Roundtable segments in one place. Same thing for our Another View on health shows. And don't forget about us on Facebook. Drop us a line and let us know how you like our new look. Next week, get ready, everyone who loves to cook and loves to eat. Jay Sennett joins us with delicious recipes that taste good and are good for you. And you've also heard about wine pairings. Well, what do you think about jazz pairings? He's actually going to talk to us about how to pair jazz with different meals to make a complete experience. So that should be great. Our music is composed and performed by Jay Sennett, for producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Victor Bowen, Eric Moore, who answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.